The national championship rematch got all of the hype in the game delivered. LSU, on the other hand, did not. LSU falls to Iowa 94-87 in the Elite Eight. Was it more so about what went wrong for the Tigers or what went right for Caitlin Clark and the Iowa Hawkeyes?
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, what's up, y'all? Welcome into Locked On LSU. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. You can also check us out on YouTube as well. Subscribe, comment, like, rate, review, all of that great stuff. However you interact with the podcast and wherever you listen, always I just appreciate you for making us your first listen every single day. That one stinks. That is a tough one to lose. That's a tough one to swallow. That's a hard loss, frankly. LSU loses 94-87 to the Iowa Hawkeyes at the hands of Caitlin Clark in the Elite Eight. I can, go over everything that LSU could have done better, and we will. And overall, it was a matchup that absolutely delivered. The physicality, the scoring, the tempo, my goodness, was it back and forth. Really, for a majority of the first half, it was Iowa scores and LSU responds. LSU scores and Iowa responds. It was incredibly back and forth, incredibly up-tempo, chippy and physical, everything that you could have asked for with a game with a stage as big as it had. And in the game and matchup in two teams that have as much recent history as these two teams have following the national championship last season. And I have to give LSU a lot of credit. They fought until the very last second. That didn't look like a team that was down 10 with 30 seconds to go, give or take. They out-rebounded Iowa. They were so incredibly aggressive and physical in the paint. If it wasn't Angel Reese, it was Anissa Morrow. If it wasn't Anissa Morrow, it was Flau'jae Johnson. Incredibly physical, great defense that LSU played against Iowa Monday night. I mean, it had an elite first half from Angel Reese. Anything you could have asked for from Angel Reese. I mean, my goodness, her final stat total, 17 points and 20 rebounds. I mean, Angel Reese, she was not messing around in the paint. Overall, it was a great game. It was fun. It was delivered. I think so many households across America were tuned into that game. But ultimately, one team had Caitlin Clark and one team didn't. I'm not going to say that is all it boiled down to, because LSU lost only by 7 points. And there were still a lot of areas in which LSU could have improved if they just hit a few more things, if they just clean up a few things here and there. That's a game that they could have won. So I'm not going to say that that's the sole reason. I'm not going to say that that's the only reason that they had Caitlin Clark and you didn't. Because guess what? You beat them last year in the national championship when they had Caitlin Clark and you didn't. But I think that's the lead story. And I think that's what I have to start with here. Is how Caitlin Clark is just unfreaking stoppable. And LSU didn't have an answer. Hailey Van Lith was on her to start, and Hailey Van Lith was getting beat. Caitlin Clark was just toying with her. Hailey Van Lith couldn't keep up with her. Last year, Poa couldn't keep up with her. It wasn't until the last minute and a half, 2 minutes, that Kim Mulkey decided to maybe shake things up and get two men on Caitlin Clark. Maybe let's double team this girl that's dropped 41 on you tonight. But overall, it was just, there's absolutely things that LSU could have done to defend Caitlin Clark better. But when Caitlin Clark can pull up from the logo at half court and drain a three and not even break a sweat, frankly, I don't know how you're supposed to defend that. And all the credit in the world to Caitlin Clark. I know that you as an LSU fan listening to this right now probably doesn't want to hear all about Caitlin Clark and how great she is and giving her flowers. I get it. I understand. And we'll get into the LSU side of things. But I have to give credit where credit is due. Caitlin Clark has received all the hype in the world. She's on every commercial. She's in every advertisement. If it's not State Farm, it's Gatorade or some other commercial. It's promotions for ESPN women's college basketball. The conversation about this game was going to be very Caitlin Clark centric. Every game that Iowa plays in, the conversation is Caitlin Clark centric. I don't know if I've ever seen a player do a halftime interview, but Holly Rowe did a halftime interview with Caitlin Clark. I mean, or maybe it was the break between the first and the second quarter, whenever it was. Like, Caitlin Clark is being covered like no other female athlete I think that we've ever seen. And I think that there can always be an element of overexposure, or maybe the student athlete can't handle the limelight. But all the hype that Caitlin Clark gets, whether it drives you crazy or not, I mean, you have to give her credit because she lives up to it. 41 points, drained 9 threes, ties an NCAA tournament record, 7 rebounds, 12 assists, 2 steals, and a block. Caitlin Clark is unfreaking believable. And Caitlin Clark had the game of her life. And I say game of her life, but my goodness, it seems like every single given night, Caitlin Clark can have a stat line that looks like this. But Caitlin Clark just got really hot and had the game of her life against a really good LSU team that was incredibly motivated, that was playing their butts off, that I know probably went into that game thinking, look, we cannot let Caitlin Clark beat us, yet she still did. And I think that you have to give her credit for that. I think you have to give her flowers where her flowers are due. Because that was the difference in this game. Caitlin Clark was hitting your shots, and you weren't. When Iowa needed offensive momentum, there was Caitlin Clark to drain a 3. And it wasn't just Caitlin Clark. I mean, Iowa was getting supplementary scoring. That was one thing that I pointed out on the pregame podcast. Was one thing that made me feel good about LSU winning this game was the fact that they can, if you're not getting it from Angel Reese on any given night, you can get it from an Anissa Morrow or a Flau'jae Johnson, who has played incredibly well this entire tournament. That LSU just had more depth, where Iowa, it was more so the Caitlin Clark show and then everyone else who's able to get their hands on the ball. But that wasn't the case on Monday night. It wasn't just Caitlin Clark and her 41. It was Kate Martin with 21. It was Sydney Falter with 16. That Iowa was getting a little bit more of that secondary scoring that maybe they haven't traditionally gotten, or they haven't gotten on a consistent enough basis. So yes, a credit to that Iowa team, but my goodness, credit to Caitlin Clark, because she was the difference. She was unstoppable. And as crazy as Hailey Van Lith drove me on Monday night, and we'll get into Hailey Van Lith because it makes me want to rip my hair out sometimes. I think we all kind of felt the same way Hailey Van Lith did in that viral moment when she's just putting up her hands, Michael Jordan style, just a big shrug. What am I supposed to do with that? Can't keep up with her. Hailey Van Lith absolutely struggled keeping up with Caitlin Clark, as would, I think, a lot of other players in college basketball would. And a lot of other players have. But let's get into the LSU side of things. It wasn't just Caitlin Clark, because LSU didn't do a lot of things to help themselves in several areas on Monday night. So we'll get into that coming up next. Why LSU lost beyond just Caitlin Clark, because that's going to be the story. But let's dig a little bit deeper. What could LSU have done better to help themselves on Monday night in the Elite Eight against Iowa? We'll get into that after just a few words from our sponsors. All right, I want to tell you about LinkedIn. So when you are hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. So I've actually used LinkedIn Jobs to hire, or at least to help the radio station that I work for hire for a producer position. We were in dire need of help. It was at an incredibly busy time of the season. We didn't have a ton of resources to hire. We just knew that we needed the right person and we needed them quickly. LinkedIn Jobs was the perfect place to go for that, because LinkedIn, it's not just another job board. It has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals that you cannot find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all of that while making the process easy and intuitive. And I know that small businesses, just like the radio station that I work for, are wearing so many hats and it might not have the time or resources to hire. I have 2.5 million small businesses using LinkedIn for hiring. So, it is proven. And there are several small businesses across the country going to LinkedIn for their services. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, rolling along here, Locked On LSU. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, we are part of the Locked On Network, your team every single day. So, are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? You have to turn down the volume with all of that shouting. Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free, best part, it's for free, 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Or let's continue the conversation. LSU falls to Iowa 94-87 in the Elite Eight. We know that Caitlin Clark went off 41 points. She was unfreaking stoppable. But it wasn't just like you did everything right and there was simply nothing else that you could have done. LSU made their fair share of mistakes and they had their fair share of deficiencies that ultimately ended up costing them that game. It wasn't just Caitlin Clark. First and foremost, the shooting. The shooting made me so frustrated, because shooting went far too cold, far too frequently. So you had a slow start, 17-9 start. Iowa had all the momentum. Your shots weren't falling, and Iowa was just peppering you with threes. Kim Mulkey calls timeout. LSU looks like a different team after that timeout. The momentum kind of completely shifts. Right out of the timeout, last year, Poa hits a three. And then ultimately, so they had a three to go up 17-12. And then ultimately at the end of the first quarter, LSU went on a 10-0 run. They're up 31-26 at the end of the first quarter. Super back and forth second quarter, very high scoring in the second quarter. It was like almost like watching a game of ping pong. It was like you score and then you score and then you score and then you score. It was very back and forth. Every shot was answered. 45 all going into the half. I'm thinking, you got to get some sort of performance-enhancing drug in this halftime speech. We've seen this team completely change their energy, completely change their focus, and completely take control of games coming out of halves. We saw it against Middle Tennessee in the round of 32. We saw it against UCLA in that transition from the third quarter to the fourth quarter. We didn't see that passion and fire coming out of the half because it was truly a dreadful and disastrous third quarter for LSU. That is where I feel like LSU lost the game. Was offensively, they couldn't get anything done. They could not get anything done in the third quarter. And frankly, I wasn't looking at the live time stats as I was watching the game, but I was shocked that it was just 24-13 alone in the third quarter. I was shocked that you were only outscored by 11 points by Iowa in the third quarter because it felt so much worse than that. Angel Reese banged up her ankle right before that, right before the half. And it kind of felt like the rest of the team almost took on that frustration. Angel Reese felt frustrated, and then Angel Reese came out looking much slower. You could tell that the injury was bothering her, the ankle injury, whatever, happened to Angel Reese. As of now, the time of recording on Monday night, don't know, what the status is with Angel Reese's ankle. She was obviously able to come back and finish the game until she got fouled out about a minute and a half before the end of the fourth quarter. But it was like once Angel Reese sat with the ankle injury, the couple minutes going into the half and the start to the third quarter, it was like all of the life was just sucked out of that team. They just looked completely deflated and they couldn't hit anything. They were 5 for 26 from the field in the third quarter. They were missing layups. They were missing threes. And look, a lot of those were contested shots because this is the Elite Eight, and a lot of the shots that you are going to take are going to be contested. But there were wide open shots, easy layups. You can't be missing those. And the turnovers, it was just dumb mistake after missed shot, after so many opportunities you got to finally just, give yourself a little bit of life, a little bit of energy. And every time you missed a shot, seemed like Iowa would respond with at least 2, if not another freaking 3 from Caitlin Clark. So the shooting was the third quarter shooting is really what killed this LSU team, but it was the cold snaps that that happened too frequently. I think the other thing, kind of going along the same lines, if we're going to look at the problems as a web, if you're going to look at the middle circle as shooting, one of the little boxes coming off of that main circle in the web is 3-point shooting. LSU attempted a season-high 24 three-pointers. Only made 8 of their 24 three-point attempts. LSU got out of their brand of basketball. I said it in the podcast pregame. If you get into a 3-off with Iowa, you will lose. Because you do not have anyone that can shoot the 3 like Caitlin Clark can shoot the 3. Now, to be fair, no one in America, men or women, have someone that can shoot the 3 like Caitlin Clark can shoot the 3. But that's why you don't get yourself wrapped up in that kind of brand of game. That's why you try to keep yourself in the game to continue to play your brand of basketball, of winning those battles in the paint. But LSU got to the point, they got down so bad in the third quarter that they couldn't do that anymore. That just hitting 2 after 2 after 2 after 2 wasn't enough to keep up with 3 after 3 after 3 after 3. So shooting 3 is not LSU's brand, and they got outside of their brand of basketball. LSU was always going to lose if it came down to who hit better 3-pointers, because it will always be Iowa every single time. The turnovers were killers too. I mean, that deserves its own web in and of itself. Iowa turned the ball over 12 times. You turned it over 13. So it's not like it was some overwhelming lopsided stat. But the difference was Iowa was able to turn that into 16 points. Iowa was able to turn your 13 turnovers into 16 points. You were able to turn their 12 turnovers only into 9. I mean, that could be the difference of the game right there. And look, if we're going to talk turnovers, we have to talk Hailey Van Lith. I don't know what she was doing. Truly. Like, some of those passes, I don't know what she was doing. I don't know what she was seeing. But I found myself every single time the ball got in Hailey Van Lith's hands, I would put my hand firmly on my forehead and I would say, why is the ball in Hailey Van Lith's hands? Get her off the court, because she was far more of a liability than she was an asset to LSU on Monday night. But, look, it was a hard-fought game. It's 2 incredibly good teams. And you saw why Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark get as much notoriety and got as much pregame buzz as they did. Because those are 2 absolute freaking superstars. It just came down to Iowa's superstar and Caitlin Clark did superstar things. And Angel Reese had a fantastic game. Flau'jae Johnson continues to play like she knows that this is her team next year. That you did a lot of good things. You didn't do enough. And the mistakes at the end of it were far too much to overcome. So credit to Iowa and credit to Caitlin Clark, because they did what they needed to do and they're headed to the Final Four and you're headed home. I do want to talk kind of big picture evaluation of this season, temperature check. Where are we? Where's Angel Reese? We'll get into that coming up next after just a few words from our sponsors. Okay, I want to tell you about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. That's the formula for winning championships, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything that you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. They've got superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. So, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every single time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts that you need at the prices that you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, rolling along here, locked on LSU. The LSU women's basketball season ends earlier than I think we all wanted it to. LSU gets bounced in the Elite Eight at the hands of Caitlin Clark and the Iowa Hawkeyes, 94-87. So I just want to kind of do a look back at the season, an evaluation of the season. And this is something that we'll continue to do in even more depth throughout the week. But I just wanted to touch on it tonight now that it's kind of fresh and new. And this is all really my instant reaction. I'll say this: winning a national championship and then getting back into the national championship conversation, that's really difficult. Like that's hard to do. There's a reason why it's so difficult to win in this sport. There's a reason why, and on both sides, you don't see typically back-to-backs. And you see it probably more on the women's side of the game than you do in the men's side. And I'll be, completely transparent with that. But back-to-backs don't happen very often. And it's because it's hard. And you could even argue it's harder now than it's ever been, because you're dealing with roster attrition. Because every single year, not only are you recruiting new players, you're re-recruiting your roster. Absolutely, LSU has benefited from the transfer portal. Hello, look at Angel Reese and Anissa Morrow. Not so much Hailey Van Lith tonight. And I'll be salty tonight. And then I promise we'll be nice another day. But LSU has benefited from the transfer portal. But what do we always say? The transfer portal giveth and the transfer portal taketh away. It's hard to win in this sport. It's hard to follow up national championships. It's especially hard whenever you lose 3 out of your starting 5 from your national championship season. And it's hard to find yourself back there. So I'll give Kim Mulkey and Angel Reese and Flau'jae Johnson a whole heck of a lot of credit. I'll give Anissa Morrow and Michaela Williams a whole heck of a lot of credit for coming into this team and carving out the role that they have carved out for themselves. Because they know it's not easy. Kim Mulkey knows it's not easy. I mean, it's hard to get back. That's the thing. And that's what I think makes this loss so difficult. Is it's really easy today to say, well, we'll be right back there next year. But you don't know that. Nothing is guaranteed. Because it's the exact thing that I'm giving this LSU team credit for, of getting back into the conversation, of going from a national championship to an Elite Eight and back-to-back seasons. That's damn good. And that's damn impressive. But it's really hard to do it again. And it would also be really hard to do it if Angel Reese isn't part of it. And that's the second layer to all of this. Is you don't know, you're not guaranteed to get back there next year. And you're also not guaranteed to have your vocal leader, your leader on the court in Angel Reese. That's what she has been for these last 2 seasons. I don't know what Angel Reese's plans are. I think I'm preparing myself for the worst and hoping for the best. Hoping that she feels like there's unfinished business at LSU, that she's just frankly not satisfied with how things ended, that missing time due to a pesky little ankle injury and getting fouled out with less than 2 minutes to go in the game. Maybe she feels like there's just something more there, that she wants to run it back. She wants to win another national championship at LSU. But it did kind of feel like she was ready to say her goodbyes, that she went on her goodbye tour of 2024. But of course, whatever Angel Reese decides to do is completely up to her. And if she decides that going pro is the best thing for her, then she decides that going pro is the best thing for her. And I would support her wholeheartedly. But it's the uncertainty of what next season holds, and knowing that, yeah, you could talk about next year, but man, was this season a grind. Man, was there some highs and some lows and some anxiety and a whole heck of a lot of excitement that you're going to have to go back through in order to not just get back to this place, but get past this place. That national titles don't come around very easily. But I do think that there's a lot of reason for optimism. I said it in the last segment, and I'll reiterate it. Flau'jae Johnson is playing like, acting like, and holding herself to a certain standard like a player that knows this is her team next year. And if Angel Reese decides to come back, then all the better. But Flau'jae knows that if Angel Reese decides to go on to the next step, that's her team, that she's the leader, that she is going to take on this ownership of the team and be that continued presence from that national championship team and hold that future team to a high standard. So absolutely, you're always going to have talent. As long as Kim Mulkey is coaching this team, you're going to have talented players, whether it's through the transfer portal or whether it's through recruiting and so on and so forth. But if this is Flau'jae's team, if Angel Reese does decide to make that next step and Flau'jae's in charge, I feel like this team's in good hands. But I'll leave the optimism maybe for tomorrow. And for now, I just want to be sad because it was a tough way to go out. He lost to a really good team against the best player in the country, who might be the best player in the history of this sport. And it happens. It's not a bad loss, but it's definitely a loss. That just sucks. It just sucks. We'll continue the conversation. I do want to get your thoughts on this. We'll absolutely touch on those on tomorrow's edition of Locked on LSU. Feel free to comment down below. Feel free to send it in via Twitter at Caroline Fenton 1 or at Locked on LSU. Just kind of your evaluation of the season, your evaluation of the game, your temperature check, where you're at with this team, where you're at moving forward. Maybe a few words that you would use to kind of summarize what this season was this past year, because it's incredibly impressive. You started out the season losing to Colorado when you thought that the world was falling. And then you found yourself back in the Elite Eight. I think that you can be proud of it, even while understanding and having to live with the fact that it's falling short of expectations. So I do want to get into your thoughts, and we'll continue to recap the game on Monday night, and also, of course, what Kim Mulkey and Flau'jae and Angel and the rest of this team had to say post-game. And we'll do that on tomorrow's edition of Locked on LSU.